C3, Connecting Coaches Cognition, Coaching with Courtney and Christensen. As a busy coach, you spend all day refueling, revamping, and reflecting with educators. Now's the time to stop and recharge your batteries with some much-needed coaching for the coach.
Welcome back to another episode of C3. I'm Courtney Groskin, and I'm here with
Violet Christensen.
Violet, what's new in your world?
Oh, I love this time of year. You're kind of teetering between Colorado winter and spring. It's constantly yinging and yanging back and forth. And with my own personal world, we're doing the same. We're trying to wrap up some spring clubs and enjoy some of those spring things in the snow. But then we're also registering for summer activities and summer clubs and planting things and prepping, marking off dates. So it's that exciting time of the year, both personally and then also professionally, where it seems like it's just ramping up everywhere. You're heading into that busy season in education. And I've had the esteemed privilege to be coaching some new educators through all of these firsts. We were talking about last time with first conferences, and this time we're working on first field trip planning and some of these really big summations of projects that they're trying to wrap up. So I've really enjoyed diving into that first year educator mind again and being able to help them unlock success and be able to be reflective and smart, intentional planners moving towards the end of this year. It's busy everywhere. You can feel the energy, right, Courtney?
Oh, totally. And it's trying to get those first year teachers to understand how quick April, May goes. They're not two separate months. It is just 1 month because it flies so quickly.
Absolutely. April, May, right? And I actually had to sit down and we had to look at how many physical weeks, how many physical days, and backwards plan some of those things because there's all that end of year fun that comes as well, right?
It's an exciting time.
What's going on with you, Courtney? How are your educators doing?
They're doing great. We're moving into testing season, which is always challenging as a coach. But this year I've kind of found a new way to make myself useful. During our testing weeks, I'm going to be starting in our early elementary classrooms and going in to do some data collection around small group instruction of what's going well and what kind of scaffolds people are using. And then after testing, I will go into our upper grades, our testing grades, and collect the same data. And then I'm going to anonymize the data and share it with the building leadership team. And that's kind of going to be a springboard for planning our PD for next year. So I'm still doing coaching things, but giving people a little space and time to get focused on working with their kids through that test.
What a brilliant use of your coaching time to be able to just do that flip-flop, still be able to get the big picture and the smaller details in order to help progress your coaching forward.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. I'm excited to see what the results look like.
I can't wait to hear more.
Today we have Keith Young joining us. He's an educational coach, trainer, and writer. Keith was raised in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains of northern Alabama. After a short stint at seminary, he pivoted to teaching secondary students for the U.S. government in Germany. In the first years of teaching, he developed a knack for leading and training colleagues. Eventually, Keith shifted full-time to training teachers and leading school improvement efforts at the school district level. Later, he became a principal, leading school turnaround work and regularly increasing student outcomes by double digits in Colorado, Puerto Rico, and Arizona. Along the way, Keith picked up a multiplicity of advanced education degrees. Nowadays, Keith lives on the coast of South Carolina and trains and coaches administrators, school leadership teams, and teacher coaches. As a coach, he's known for telling it like it is and using a blended coaching model. The school Keith coaches across the United States and internationally produce significant increases in student outcomes. Welcome, Keith.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
We have just been warming up with Keith, and we're so excited to hear more and dive deep. Keith, start by telling us a little bit about your background in education and coaching and how you got to where you are now.
Well, I'm originally from rural North Alabama. I'm a first-generation college student. My mom was a bank teller. I went to Head Start in Gadsden, Alabama. And my dad did a lot of things, but he was mostly he sold used farm equipment. I went to college, as I mentioned. I was an English and math middle school teacher. Then I worked in the district office. I sort of got a knack for working with teacher leaders in the building. I was a school improvement officer. When I was first asked to do it, I was a very young teacher, so I thought it meant painting the building and that sort of thing, maintenance work. And I was like, I'm I came from the country. I was like, all right, let's do it. Then I found it was something very different, but I still liked it. I was fairly successful at managing my middle school colleagues. I just treated them like my students. They thought I was kind of funny, and I thought they were just hilarious. And so, so I did that well enough that I got a job at the district office doing the same thing. So I was going around helping other schools lead school improvement. Later, after I worked in the district office for a few years, I became a turnaround principal. I worked in Europe in schools for the Department of Defense in Europe. I worked in Puerto Rico. I also worked in Denver, Colorado, right down the road from you folks over there, and in Arizona. Along the way, I got all the education I could, master's degree, doctorate degree. And now I'm settled over here on the coast of South Carolina so that I am close to my 18, almost 20 nieces and nephews. And nowadays, what I do, in addition to writing, is I work with a number of districts. I'm in about 1,000 classrooms a year, modeling coaching for coaches, training administrators on coaching, doing some model lessons directly with students. And I do that in a variety of places, mostly California, Virginia, Illinois, Arizona, LA. Those are some of the bigger places that I work in the past couple of years. That's a little bit about me.
Well, you have an amazing background. I love how, the path of people who coach, it just kind of finds you. Like you move through all these different positions and it seemed like, you're just kind of plucked out and put in the right spot to make it happen.
I know. And the nice part is all of those experiences, whether they were working in the classroom or whether they were working with adults, I think they inform being able to write well and to train effectively coaches. And one of the benefits, I have two co-authors, Tamara and Angie. I think one of the benefits we bring to the conversation is our experiences are so varied. We've worked from rural Indian reservations in northern Arizona to agriculture fields in a high school in Hawaii, to China, to Qatar, all over the place in a variety of schools with a variety of students and a variety of teachers.
Yeah, that understanding of various backgrounds and cultures and all of that and how it plays into coaching is really important to understand. As coaches, we love to calibrate, so we want to know what your definition of coaching is.
Our coaching definition is not super fancy. When we think about coaches, we think of the old school piano teacher. We think of our baseball coach. We think of our gymnastics coach. So our definition of a coach is, a professional who prompts a teacher or trains a teacher or instructs a teacher. Sometimes the coach is correcting. Sometimes the coach is leading in self-reflection. Sometimes the coach is the teacher of the teacher. So we use a very hybrid research base to our model of coaching, but we always kind of come back to that definition of, well, what did my piano teacher do? What did my choir director do when they needed to correct me? And a lot of those effective practices inform the practices that we use when we talk about coaching.
It's nice to be able to have that analyzation that everyone can go back to, being able to have that analogy to your childhood of your piano teacher or your basketball coach. And it kind of goes to that same sentiment of educators, we all need coaches. And sometimes that isn't always at the forefront of everyone in education's mind. So just thinking back at that, and no matter what facet we're in our life, we still need a coach, no matter what we might be doing.
Yeah, Serena Williams has a coach. She's better than anybody, including her coach, but she still has a whole staff of coaches.
Exactly. And that power of that thought partner in order to help you be reflective is just unbelievable. And we want to drill in a little bit more. We appreciate you giving us a little sneak peek and having a PDF ahead of time here, Keith. But we wanted to know a little bit more about the inspiration for your new book, the Instructional Coaching Handbook. And if you can give us a little teaser for our listeners, for them to be able to hear your insights.
So we were very careful to say that the book is not another model of coaching. I've told you sort of our definition of coaching is a very hybrid model. We use, Marzano. We use Aguilar. We use Jim Knight. We used all of those folks who were great minds in coaching. What we saw missing was a one-stop shop where you could look at some of those trouble spots in coaching and sort of dive in to one section, get some ideas, and go experiment with them, have them succeed, have them fail, come back and try some more. So really we do training on coaching all the time. And then some of our favorite questions come after the training. The coaches will pull us aside and say, okay, I love that. I love everything you said. Now, what do I do with this teacher who is absolutely not open to feedback at all? And here's the evidence for it. We said, there wasn't like one source to go to get some quick strategies and some not so quick strategies for dealing with some of those things. So that was sort of the inspiration. And the format of the book is that big, huge pre-referral intervention manual, the PRIM manual. A lot of us use that in special education. It's a huge book, but it's a great book. And you're dealing with a problem with a student who throws his textbook away. Okay, so you go to that chapter that says student who throws his textbook away, and then there's like 80 things to try. That was sort of like, we wanted something like that. And we're pretty happy that our work with ASCD was able to produce that.
Well, we love that you're referencing all of these past guests and pulling from their work as well. So we reference people to go back and be able to hear those episodes of where Keith is pulling from. But also, I just found it powerful in the way that it's like the parking lot from your trainings became your book. Like all of those unearthed questions that you just can't let go of that were like, give us a little bit of a how-to, you're able to bring to fruition in this way.
That's exactly how it worked. So Tamara works a lot in early childhood. She had the same thing happen to her. Angie has worked very similar to me in a lot of high school. She was a high school turnaround principal. And so it was a matter of us, a lot of times when we didn't know what else to say, we were consulting each other. Like, what do you do with this situation? Here's the 3 ideas I have. Here's 4 ideas. And that was, our first brain dump, for the book.
Yeah, all that practical knowledge and experience being shared with the world, the best way to learn. I know from reading that a lot of your book is based on research. Can you share with us some of the research around the effects of coaching?
Well, some of the people who influenced us are some of the people that I already mentioned, Knight, Aguilar, Marzano. We love the Deans of Impact. We love the science of reading. So those are a lot of things that undergird, sort of our philosophy. We call it our conceptual framework, sort of like when you're working on your dissertation or your doctorate. Those are the people who influenced us. The studies, a big influence, people came up in different ways. The Skillful Teacher, we looked to see who we cited the most. We cited The Skillful Teacher the most by John Zephyr. I trained with him years ago, and Angie has trained with him. And he actually wrote the foreword to our book. So he was a major influence. His book is now, The Skillful Teacher is now in the 9th edition. It has some staying power, 2020. That was a huge research base for us when we were looking at instruction. The other researchers out of Harvard, Stone and Heen, we don't see them referenced so much in education, but they were big influence when we talked about openness to feedback. They write a lot about openness to feedback. I love their stuff. I'm just dying for them to write another book so I can see what else they say. Those are some of the major influences. Malcolm Knowles' classic, The Adult Learner, just came out in its 9th edition in 2020 as well. We use that. And then also How People Learn is a text from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. Just a couple of years ago, they came out with their 2nd edition. So those are some of the big researchers that influenced our work. And then there are lots and lots of studies. The Kraft study from 2018, which was a meta-analysis that talked about the impact of coaching on teacher instructional practices. And then there were a couple of other studies by Gregory in 2016, Garrett in 2016, that talk more specifically. The meta study from Kraft didn't find a huge influence on student outcomes, but the Garrett and Gregory studies did, particularly in mathematics and in higher level thinking skills, that teachers who were coached were seeing some increased student outcomes in terms of those parameters. So I think it's really exciting that we have some nice studies on coaching coming out, because there's all kinds of models out there. But we're now getting some meta-analysis and some other studies that help us see the impact either on teacher outcomes or sometimes on student outcomes.
Well, I feel like you have added to my reading list quite a bit. It might have to be my morning reading, not my late night reading, but I am excited to dive into some of the titles and research studies that you have just spoken to, Keith. And this book is just a wealth of knowledge, and we want to see if we can tailor into a kind of a specific vignette. And we know that coaches do a lot of coaching around teacher efficacy. And we wanted to see if you can share some of your tangible tips as you're speaking to about efficacy, and also maybe if there's a small example with a coach or with a teacher that was unlocking something for them, if you could share something in that realm.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Efficacy is all about teachers feeling, knowing, or seeing their impact. And so for the three of us, we really do at our core believe that coaching is about, empowering teachers, not just for the time that they're, talking to us or in front of us, but for their entire career. And we're constantly saying that, like every single week, this is for the rest of your life. This is for the whole generation of students that you're coaching. We want you to feel some sense of power, some sense of movement in terms of student, attitude, student affect, student academics. There's a couple of strategies that come to mind really quickly out of that chapter. There's a graphic early on. It's just a big circle is all it is, with a dot in it. And the circle represents, our work. Our work is, a teacher, as an educator. And then the dot represents a problem. And so often what we find, many of us become obsessed with that dot, that teeny tiny dot that's in the circle. So sometimes just by showing that visual to teachers helps them kind of put it in perspective, the problem that they're talking about or the problem that they're obsessed with, and gets them focused on the things that they can control. It sounds super simple, but we get a lot of positive feedback, from coaches and from teachers from just using that, simple graphic. And then another one I was just talking to some teachers about in Illinois last week is right out of the book, and it's to teach teachers to curate. So we quiz teachers all the time. Like, we'll say, hey, Courtney, what are the hardest things to teach in fourth grade reading? And, the teachers all across the nation say the same thing. Inferencing, main idea, schwa, the phonics sound, schwa, crazy, we say, okay, then those things that drive you crazy, you need half a dozen ways to teach them. You need to curate. You need to quiz everybody who teaches. You need everything you read. You need to read it with that lens. What strategies would help me teach inferencing? You don't need a dozen ways to teach every single concept or skill, but you do for those hardest things with your age group or your content area. I saw a high school teacher do this beautiful job in southern Arizona, teaching right, left, and center of the political system. And it's so abstract. It's so really hard for students to get. He had turned his whole wall into these three sections, and he put, artists, he put politicians, he put political parties. He just threw stuff up on that wall all year long. So by the end of the year, and texts from their readings, and by the end of the year, those students understood this concept. He had curated a strategy to get across this hard concept. So just teaching teachers to collect those strategies for those hardest to teach ideas, concepts, and skills is a powerful tool, although it's actually kind of simple. But I would say those are two of my favorite strategies out of that section on coaching efficacy, but at least the first ones that come to mind.
Yeah, that graphic is really powerful. And I think in those coachable moments, it's really quick and easy for teachers to understand and kind of take that moment to reframe their thinking.
Thank you, Courtney. And one of the things we mentioned in the book is we kind of give the coaches a little tip. The research says you need to draw it in the moment that you're talking to them. You don't need to make a handout ahead of time. Just draw it right there in the moment. That's actually one of our coaching tips. And so we were glad to get that in there.
Well, it's just such a nice teaching tool that can be in a very short conversation when someone is in that that state of overwhelm or stuck in a problem. So I love you sharing that very tangible tip here for everybody to take with them.
I want to say one more thing there. There's a few visuals in there, and they're some of our favorite things. We do a lot of talking and coaching, a lot of coaching. And some teachers really respond much better to visuals. Some teachers respond much better to role plays. It may not be their favorite thing to do, but it often will get the point across. So those are some tips we tried to highlight in the book. You've got to, sometimes you need to stop so much of the talking and do something else.
The book really gives a lot of tangible tips to build that coach's toolbox, where you have those things that you can quickly pull out when one thing isn't working, and that during a coaching conversation, you can kind of stop and be like, wait, let me try this and reframe it that way to kind of get things back on track. So I know the book breaks down many different areas of coaching. What area are you most passionate about and why?
The area I'm most passionate about. I love the work on efficacy. I really love the chapter on openness to feedback, just because I get so many coaches asking, how do I get this teacher to be open to the idea of coaching? And then I really like the strategies on dealing with challenging adult behaviors, because so many coaches get especially if they're new, they get so nervous about, adults who push back a little bit or who are challenging in their behavior. And I just did a whole series of training on that last week in Illinois. And the coach was like, oh, thank goodness. But it's just like I like to overtrain the coaches. And in the book, we try to give ideas like, don't be so nervous, just experiment. And we try to be pretty transparent in the book. Like, the strategies don't always work. And we have some stories where it didn't work. And that's how it goes, and that's why we structure the book. Like, here's some strategies to try. When it don't work, go and try some more. So I would say, to answer your question, which one am I most passionate about? I like the one on challenging behaviors, I think, because lots of people tiptoe around that, or they're nervous about it, and there's some simple strategies like how to use positive intent. It's just not a strategy for, working with primary students. It's a strategy you can use with adults. How to stay calm yourself, some of those simple things like teaching the teacher, okay, just breathe for a couple of minutes before you respond, or think about, overnight before you hit send on that email. Those are some simple things, but some powerful things that help coaches help teachers be more effective team members.
Well, we appreciate all of those tangible ideas, and we know everyone's going to want to be diving into your book to be putting all of those into their teacher toolbox. As you said, they don't always work, so we want to have that plethora in order to be able to pull from. We're going to kind of switch gears into our rapid fire questions, and it's your time to shine. We want to hear all things Keith and tell us where we can learn more from and with you, where we can follow you, and what projects you have coming up soon.
Well, I do have a website, akyconsulting.com. You'll find information on the book, where to get the book there. I'm also on Twitter at @Keith Young. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn at Keith Young. And I'm on Instagram at AKY Consulting. I don't post too much on Instagram, but I do have a few things on there. Oh, coming down the pike at the end of the month, Tamara and Angie and I, all three of the authors of the book, we're going to be in your neck of the woods. We're going to be at the ASCD conference in Denver. So we're excited about that. We're going to do a little presentation on coaching, and then we're going to sign some books after that. And we're pretty excited because since we've met in person, but not since we started writing the book. Because Tamara lives in Oakland, California, Angie's in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm in South Carolina. And so we've done all of our work on Zoom and, virtual documents. So this will be, since we started the book, this will be the first time we will all three see each other in person. So we're pretty excited.
And what better place than Denver in the spring?
Absolutely. Downtown Denver. We'd love it.
And ASCD and bring the trifecta together. We all in person. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, we're excited.
Oh, and we're just
y'all got to come to Denver.
Absolutely, just a stone's throw. Well, and Keith, we're just building an Instagram too. So we're all building an Instagram. We're getting better. C3 is trying to branch out there too. So we're with you. And Keith, we're excited to see you at ASCD. And we want to know, what is your tagline or your bumper sticker for coaching?
I would have two. Coaching is a conversation with a goal, a professional conversation with a goal. And the other one is be kind and be direct. You don't have to be mean to be direct. Those would be my bumper stickers for coaching.
They're powerful. I love that. Clear as kind. It goes back to Kim Scott. Absolutely using that radical candor.
Yep.
Tell us, what is your secret coaching superpower or your go-to move?
I give it away. It's a little bit detailed in the resources section. In the resources section, we talk about actually how we use our model of coaching. And I would say my go-to strategy when I'm stuck is brainstorming. So I would say, hey, Violet, let's brainstorm that. Because, I've got some ideas. I'm not sure if I heard you well. I want to get your ideas on the table. I want to get my ideas on the table, because I find so many times, I use that so many times, because so often a better idea, you'll come up with just some prompting from me, maybe a couple of ideas from me, a couple of ideas from you. You'll come up with a better idea, or I'll come up with a better idea that'll help us with whatever the situation is that we're talking about in the coaching conversation.
That's fantastic. It's a powerful go-to move, and it can work in any situation, whether you're planning or reflecting or calibrating. And I think that's a nice one to be able to have there and be able to get all thoughts on the table in order to be able to divulge in one another's ideas deeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Keith, I know everyone is going to be rushing to get ASCD tickets as well as get your book, and they are going to be excited to dive in deeper. We are just so lucky to share you today. So thank you for spending the time with us.
Thank you, Violet. Thank you, Courtney. I appreciate it.
Keith's Instructional Coaching Handbook is a must-read for any coach. Keith shared some practical information with us today. Remember, coaching is a professional conversation with a goal. Who can you have a conversation with today? Thanks for listening, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at C3 Coaches or on Instagram.
C3, connecting, coaches, cognition. Whose thinking will you mediate today?